What would you do if you found a note that could change your life forever? Subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching stories like this one, and prepare yourself for a tale that will leave you speechless. The rain pelted against the windows of my small Manhattan apartment, drowning out the usual cacophony of city life. Jack Thompson, a struggling writer barely making ends meet, sat at my rickety desk, staring at a blank document on my ancient laptop. The words refused to come, much like the paychecks I desperately needed. Little did I know that my life was about to take a turn so unexpected. It would make my wildest fiction seem tame in comparison. The sharp trill of my phone cut through the silence, startling me. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number with a Los Angeles area code. Curiosity piqued, I answered. "Is this Jack Thompson?" a crisp, professional voice inquired. "Yes, that's me," I replied, my heart suddenly racing. "This is Amanda Reeves from Goldstein and Marks law firm. I'm calling regarding the estate of your great-aunt, Evelyn Prescott. Are you available to discuss this matter?" My great-aunt Evelyn? I barely knew her. She was the eccentric black sheep of the family who had moved to California decades ago to pursue a career in Hollywood. The last I'd heard, she was living in a sprawling mansion in Beverly Hills, surrounded by an entourage of colorful characters and her beloved cat, Mr. Whiskers. "Mr. Thompson?" Amanda's voice pulled me back to the present. "Are you there?" "Yes, sorry," I stammered. "What about Aunt Evelyn's estate?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mr. Thompson, I regret to inform you that your great-aunt passed away last week. However, there's a matter of utmost importance we need to discuss regarding her will. Would you be able to come to Los Angeles as soon as possible?" My mind reeled. Aunt Evelyn was dead, and they needed me in Los Angeles? I'm not sure I can afford a trip to LA right now, I admitted, embarrassment coloring my voice. "That won't be a problem, Mr. Thompson. Miss Prescott's estate will cover all your travel expenses. We'll arrange everything. This is a matter of considerable urgency." The gravity in Amanda's tone sent a shiver down my spine. What could be so urgent about a great-aunt I barely knew? 24 hours later, I found myself in a plush office on the top floor of a sleek skyscraper in downtown Los Angeles. Amanda Reeves, a sharp-suited woman in her 40s, sat across from me, a thick folder on the desk between us. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made me squirm. "What I'm about to tell you may come as a shock. Are you prepared?" I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Amanda opened the folder and pulled out a document. Your great-aunt, Evelyn Prescott, was a woman of considerable wealth. Her estate is valued at approximately $4.7 billion. The room seemed to spin. Billion? With a B? "However," Amanda continued, her voice cutting through my daze, "Miss Prescott had some unique ideas about the distribution of her wealth." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Amanda took a deep breath. "Mr. Thompson, according to your great-aunt's will, the sole heir to her entire fortune is her cat, Mr. Whiskers." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Her cat?" I repeated, certain I had misheard. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Whiskers, a 3-year-old Persian cat, is now one of the wealthiest beings on the planet." I laughed a nervous, disbelieving sound. "This has to be a joke, right? You can't leave billions to a cat." Amanda's expression remained serious. "I assure you, Mr. Thompson, this is no joke. Your great-aunt was eccentric, but her will is legally binding. However, there is one more crucial detail." I braced myself, wondering what could possibly top a billionaire cat. "While Mr. Whiskers is the heir, he needs a human guardian to manage his affairs. Your great-aunt has named you, Jack Thompson. As that guardian, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Me, guardian of the world's richest cat? But why me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I barely knew her. Amanda's eyes softened slightly. Your aunt left a letter for you. Perhaps it will explain her reasoning. She handed me an envelope, sealed with wax bearing the imprint of a cat's paw. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. As I read the first lines, my heart nearly stopped. "My dear Jack," it began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. But before you accept, you need to know the truth. Mr. Whiskers isn't just a cat. He's the key to unraveling a conspiracy that goes deeper than you could ever imagine. Your life is in danger from the moment you finish reading this letter. Trust no one. The fate of many rests in your hands and paws. Are you ready to discover how deep this rabbit hole goes?" I looked up at Amanda, my mind reeling. She watched me expectantly, but something in her eyes made me hesitate. Could I trust her? Could I trust anyone? As the gravity of my situation sank in, I realized my life had changed irrevocably. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. But little did I know, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As I pondered my next move, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. And somewhere in Beverly Hills, a cat named Mr. Whiskers was about to show the world that he was far more than just a pampered pet. As I left the law office, my head spinning with the implications of Aunt Evelyn's letter, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The bustling streets of Los Angeles suddenly seemed fraught with hidden dangers. Every passing car, every stranger's glance, felt like a potential threat. I hailed a taxi, giving the driver the address of Aunt Evelyn's Beverly Hills mansion. As we wound through the sun-drenched streets, I couldn't help but ask myself, what have I gotten myself into? The taxi pulled up to a set of ornate gates, beyond which sprawled a property that looked more like a small country than a home. I paid the driver and stepped out, my battered duffel bag a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding me. As I approached the intercom, the gate swung open silently. Unnerved, I made my way up the winding driveway, the mansion looming larger with each step. The front door opened before I could knock, revealing a tall, austere woman in her 60s. "Mr. Thompson, I presume?" she said, her voice as crisp as her perfectly pressed uniform. "I am Mrs. Hawthorne, the housekeeper. We've been expecting you." I followed her into a foyer that could have housed my entire New York apartment. "Where's Mr. Whiskers?" I asked, feeling slightly ridiculous addressing a cat with such formality. Mrs. Hawthorne's expression remained impassive. "The young master is in the study. He's been agitated since Miss Prescott's passing." "Young master?" I shook my head, wondering if I'd stepped into some bizarre alternate reality. The housekeeper led me through a maze of corridors, each more lavishly decorated than the last. Finally, we reached a heavy oak door. Mrs. Hawthorne knocked gently. "Enter," a voice called from within. Startled, I looked at Mrs. Hawthorne, but she merely opened the door and gestured for me to go in. Heart pounding, I stepped into the study. The room was a bibliophile's dream, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather-bound volumes as far as the eye could see. In the center, atop an antique desk, sat a fluffy white Persian cat, his blue eyes fixed intently on me. "Hello, Jack," the same voice from before said. "I've been waiting for you." I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. Did that cat just talk? A chuckle came from behind a high-backed chair near the fireplace. A man in his 50s stood up, an amused smile on his face. "Not quite, my boy. I'm Dr. Sebastian Blackwood, your aunt's longtime friend and confidant. And this," he gestured to a small device on the desk next to the cat, "is a prototype communication device your aunt was working on before she died. It interprets Mr. Whiskers' brainwaves and vocalizes them." I sank into a nearby chair, my legs suddenly weak. "This is insane," I muttered. "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet," Dr. Blackwood said, his eyes twinkling. "Mr. Whiskers, why don't you tell Jack why he's here?" The cat's gaze never left my face as the device translated his thoughts into words. "Jack, Your aunt chose you for a reason. We're on the brink of exposing a conspiracy that goes to the very top of the government and some of the world's largest corporations. Evelyn knew she was getting close, too close. That's why she left everything to me. A cat is above suspicion, after all. I laughed nervously. This has to be a joke, right? Hidden cameras? Am I on some weird reality show? Dr. Blackwood's expression turned serious. I'm afraid not, Jack. This is very real and very dangerous. Evelyn was murdered. The words hit me like a physical blow. Murdered? But I thought. The official story is natural causes. Mr. Whiskers' mechanical voice interrupted. But we know better. And now, they'll be coming for us. As if on cue, the sound of breaking glass echoed from somewhere in the mansion. Mrs. Hawthorne burst into the room, her usual composure shattered. Intruders, she gasped. They're inside the house. Dr. Blackwood sprang into action, pulling a book from a nearby shelf. A hidden panel slid open in the wall. Quickly, he urged, scooping up Mr. Whiskers. Into the panic room. As we rushed into the hidden chamber, the sound of heavy footsteps grew closer. The panel slid shut behind us just as the study door burst open. Inside the dimly lit room, surrounded by monitors showing every angle of the mansion, I watched in horror as masked figures in tactical gear methodically searched the house. What do they want? I whispered. Mr. Whiskers, now perched on a console, fixed me with those unervingly intelligent eyes. They want what Evelyn discovered, the truth that could bring down empires. What truth? I demanded, fear and frustration making my voice shake. The cat's mechanical voice was chillingly calm. The truth about Project Lazarus. The secret that blurs the line between life and death, between human and animal. The breakthrough that could change the course of human history. Dr. Blackwood placed a hand on my shoulder. Jack, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to listen carefully. Your aunt didn't just leave you a fortune and a talking cat. She left you the key to unlocking the next stage of human evolution. As the intruders continued their search outside, Dr. Blackwood began to explain. With each word, I felt my grip on reality slipping further away. Talk of secret government programs, consciousness transfer, and the blending of human and animal minds filled the air. But before he could finish, one of the monitors flickered. A face appeared. A face I recognized from countless news broadcasts and political rallies. Well, the man on the screen said, his familiar voice now laced with menace. I see Evelyn's little insurance policy has kicked in. Hello, Jack. I'm afraid you've stumbled into something much bigger than you can imagine. But don't worry, we'll be meeting face to face very soon. The screen went black, leaving us in stunned silence. Mr. Whiskers' mechanical voice broke the quiet. And so it begins. Jack, are you ready to go down the rabbit hole? As I looked from the cat to Dr. Blackwood to the now dark monitors, I realized my life had irrevocably changed. Whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back now. But little did I know, the true nature of Project Lazarus was far more terrifying and miraculous than anything I could have imagined. And somewhere in the depths of the mansion, a secret lay hidden that would shake the very foundations of what it means to be human. The panic room felt increasingly claustrophobic as the reality of our situation sank in. Dr. Blackwood's fingers flew across a keyboard, activating additional security measures throughout the mansion. We don't have much time, Mr. Whiskers' robotic voice intoned. Jack, there's a safe behind the portrait in Evelyn's bedroom. We need what's inside. I stared at the cat incredulously. You want me to go out there? With those guys still in the house? Dr. Blackwood placed a hand on my shoulder. The security system will guide you through the blind spots. But you must hurry. Before I could protest further, a panel slid open, revealing a narrow passageway. With a deep breath, I stepped into the unknown. Guided by whispered instructions through an earpiece, I navigated the mansion's hidden corridors. The sound of the intruders' searching rooms echoed eerily around me. I finally reached Aunt Evelyn's bedroom, my heart pounding. The portrait, a stern-looking woman with a white cat on her lap, seemed to watch me as I approached. Behind it, just as Mr. Whiskers had said, was a state-of-the-art safe. The combination, I whispered into my mic. 31415-926, came the reply in Mr. Whiskers' mechanical voice. As I input the numbers, I couldn't help but smile. Leave it to Aunt Evelyn to use pi as her safe combination. The safe opened with a soft hiss, revealing a small, metallic cube and a USB drive. I grabbed both, stuffing them into my pockets. "I've got them," I whispered. "Now what?" Suddenly, the earpiece crackled. "Jack, they've found the panic room. Get out of there now." Panic surged through me as I heard heavy footsteps approaching. I dove for the secret entrance, but not before a figure appeared in the doorway. "Stop right there," a gruff voice commanded. I didn't look back. I plunged into the passageway, the panel sliding shut behind me just as a bullet pinged off the metal, adrenaline pumping. I raced through the hidden corridors, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. I emerged into the garage, where Dr. Blackwood was already behind the wheel of a sleek black Tesla, Mr. Whiskers secured in a carrier in the back seat. "Get in," he yelled. I dove into the passenger seat as the garage door opened. We peeled out onto the street, tires squealing. As we sped through Beverly Hills, I finally caught my breath. "What now?" I asked. "Now," Dr. Blackwood said grimly. "We find somewhere safe to explain everything." Hours later, we pulled into a nondescript motel on the outskirts of Las Vegas. The desert heat hit me like a wall as we exited the car. Once inside our room, Dr. Blackwood set up some kind of signal jammer while I collapsed onto one of the beds. Mr. Whiskers hopped up beside me, his blue eyes fixed on my face. "It's time you learned the truth, Jack," the cat's mechanical voice said. Dr. Blackwood nodded, sitting down heavily in a chair. Project Lazarus began as a secret government initiative to prolong human life. He began, but it evolved into something far more profound and dangerous. As he spoke, I felt my grip on reality slipping away. Talk of consciousness transfer, hybrid beings, and the blurring of lines between species filled the air. "Your aunt," Dr. Blackwood continued, "was one of the lead scientists on the project. But when she discovered how the government planned to use the technology, she knew she had to stop it. And that's where I come in," Mr. Whiskers interjected. I looked at the cat, a creeping suspicion forming in my mind. "What exactly are you?" I asked hesitantly. There was a long pause before the mechanical voice replied. "I'm not just a cat, Jack. I'm your Aunt Evelyn." The room spun as the implications hit me. That's impossible," I stammered. Dr. Blackwood leaned forward. Evelyn knew they were onto her. She used the technology to transfer her consciousness into Mr. Whiskers as a safeguard. The cat you see before you contains your aunt's memories, personality, her very essence. I stared at the cat, at my aunt, in disbelief. "So, when you made the will, I ensured that my life's work and the means to expose the truth would be protected." Evelyn's voice came through the device. "I'm sorry for the deception, Jack, but I needed someone I could trust. Someone outside the world of scientific espionage." As the full weight of the situation settled on me, a new sound cut through the room. A news alert on the motel's ancient TV. "Breaking news," the anchor announced. "Billionaire tech mogul Robert Stryker has been found dead in his Silicon Valley home. Early reports suggest foul play." Evelyn's mechanical voice cut through my shock. "It's starting. They're tying up loose ends." Dr. Blackwood's face had gone pale. Robert was one of our allies on the inside. "They're moving faster than we anticipated." I stood up, pacing the small room. "So what do we do now?" Evelyn's cat eyes followed me. "Now! We use what's on that USB drive to expose everything. But we'll need help. I have a contact," Dr. Blackwood said, pulling out a burner phone. "A journalist who's been investigating Project Lazarus for years." If we can get her the evidence. As he dialed, I sank back onto the bed, my mind reeling. In the span of 48 hours, my life had transformed from struggling writer to the guardian of a billionaire cat who was actually my reincarnated aunt, caught in the middle of a conspiracy that threatened to reshape humanity itself. But as I looked at Evelyn, at Dr. Blackwood, at the USB drive that held secrets powerful enough to topple governments, I realized there was no going back. Whatever lay ahead, I was all in. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. As Dr. Blackwood spoke in hushed tones on the phone, Evelyn turned to me. "Jack," her mechanical voice said softly, "there's something else you need to know. Something I discovered just before the transfer. It's about you, and why I really chose you for this." I leaned in, my heart racing. "What is it?" But before Evelyn could answer, a deafening explosion rocked the motel. The door burst open, filling the room with smoke and armed figures. In the chaos that followed, one thought echoed in my mind. The rabbit hole went deeper than I ever could have imagined, and we were falling fast. Smoke filled the room as chaos erupted around us. Through the haze, I saw Dr. Blackwood tackle one of the intruders while Evelyn, still in Mr. Whisker's body, leapt with feline agility, clawing at another attacker's face. "Jack!" Dr. Blackwood's voice cut through the mayhem. The bathroom window. Acting on instinct, I scooped up Evelyn and dashed for the small bathroom. Behind us, the sound of gunfire erupted. I wrenched open the tiny window, thankful for once that I was on the ground floor, and squeezed through. Evelyn clutched tightly to my chest. We tumbled onto the dusty ground outside. The cool night air was a shock after the smoky chaos of the room. I looked back, heart pounding, to see Dr. Blackwood following close behind. "Run!" he gasped, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. We sprinted across the parking lot, the sound of pursuit growing behind us. A battered pickup truck sat idling near the motel office, its driver nowhere in sight. Without hesitation, Dr. Blackwood leapt into the driver's seat. "Get in!" he yelled. I dove into the passenger's side, Evelyn still in my arms, as Dr. Blackwood floored the accelerator. We peeled out of the parking lot just as our pursuers emerged from the motel room. As we sped down the empty desert highway, the adrenaline began to wear off, replaced by a bone-deep weariness and the sting of cuts and bruises I hadn't even noticed in the chaos. "Are you both okay?" Dr. Blackwood asked, his eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror. I nodded, then looked down at Evelyn. Her cat body seemed unharmed, but her blue eyes were wide with what I could only interpret as shock. "Evelyn," I said softly. Her mechanical voice crackled to life. "I'm fine, Jack, but we've lost everything." The USB drive, the cube from the safe, Dr. Blackwood's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Not everything," he said grimly. "We still have the most important piece of the puzzle." "What do you mean?" I asked. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable in the dim light of the dashboard. "You, Jack. You're the key to everything." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn's mechanical voice cut in. "It's what I was trying to tell you before we were attacked. Jack, you're not just my nephew. You're part of Project Lazarus." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What?" I whispered. Dr. Blackwood sighed heavily. "Your parents weren't killed in a car accident when you were a baby, Jack. That was a cover story. The truth is, they were scientists working on Project Lazarus, just like Evelyn and me. But something went wrong," Evelyn continued. "There was an accident at the lab. Your parents, they didn't make it. But you, Jack, you survived. And in the process, you became the first successful human test subject of Project Lazarus technology." My mind reeled. "What are you saying? That I'm some kind of experiment?" "You're more than that," Dr. Blackwood said softly. "You're living proof that consciousness can be transferred, altered, enhanced. Your mind, Jack, It's not entirely human anymore. I felt like I was going to be sick. So, what am I? Evelyn's cat eyes met mine. You're the bridge, Jack, between human and something more. Your brain has the capacity to interface directly with technology, to process information at speeds no normal human can match. And that's just the beginning. But I started, then stopped as memories began to surface. The way computers always seemed to work faster for me. How I could pick up new skills with uncanny speed. The vivid dreams that felt more like memories of places I'd never been, lives I'd never lived. We've been suppressing your abilities, Dr. Blackwood explained, protecting you. But now, with Evelyn's consciousness transfer and the forces aligning against us, we need you to embrace your full potential. As if triggered by his words, a searing pain shot through my head. Images flashed before my eyes. Laboratories, equations, faces I'd never seen before but somehow knew. Information flooded my mind, faster than I could process. I cried out, clutching my head. Through the haze of pain, I heard Dr. Blackwood and Evelyn's voices, urgent and worried. And then, suddenly, clarity. The pain subsided, replaced by a sense of expansion, as if my mind had suddenly grown beyond the confines of my skull. I opened my eyes, gasping. The world looked different, sharper, more detailed. I could see the individual dust particles dancing in the air, hear the hum of the engine with crystal clarity. Jack! Evelyn's voice, tinged with concern. Are you all right? I turned to her, then to Dr. Blackwood. For the first time, I truly saw them. Not just their physical forms, but the intricate web of thoughts, memories, and emotions that made up their beings. I whispered. I remember everything. Dr. Blackwood's eyes widened. It's happening faster than we anticipated. Jack, listen to me carefully. What you're experiencing now is just the beginning. Your mind is evolving, adapting. You're going to be able to do things that seem impossible. As if to prove his point, I suddenly became aware of the electronics in the truck, the GPS, the radio, the engine control unit. With a thought, I could access them, control them. We need to find somewhere safe, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Somewhere I can adjust to this. Evelyn nodded. I know a place, an old research facility, off the grid, if we can make it there. But before she could finish, a new sensation washed over me, a presence, vast and alien, brushing against the edges of my expanding consciousness. We're not alone, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Blackwood and Evelyn exchanged worried glances. What do you mean? Dr. Blackwood asked. I stared out into the dark desert night, my newly enhanced senses stretching far beyond the confines of the truck. Something's out there, I replied. Something not human, and it knows we're here. As the implications of my words sank in, I realized that Project Lazarus had opened a door, not just to the next stage of human evolution, but to something far beyond our understanding. And as we sped through the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were racing not just against our human pursuers, but against forces that defied comprehension. The true nature of Project Lazarus was about to be revealed, and the world would never be the same again. The old research facility loomed before us, a hulking silhouette against the pre-dawn sky. We had driven through the night, the desert landscape blurring past as I grappled with my newly awakened abilities. Every electronic device we passed sang to me in binary symphonies, and the thoughts of Dr. Blackwood and Evelyn flickered at the edges of my consciousness like fireflies. As we approached the facility's rusted gates, I felt a familiar presence brush against my mind. Stop the truck, I said suddenly. Dr. Blackwood hit the brakes, looking at me with concern. What is it, Jack? I closed my eyes, focusing on the alien consciousness I had sensed earlier. It was closer now, more defined. We're not alone here, I murmured. There's something inside the facility. Something like me, but different. Evelyn's mechanical voice crackled with static. Impossible. This place has been abandoned for years. But even as she spoke, I could feel the other presence reaching out, curious and cautious. Without thinking, I opened my mind to it. Suddenly, I was no longer in the truck. I stood in a vast white space, facing a figure that shimmered and shifted, never quite settling on a single form. Sometimes it appeared human. Other times it was a collection of glowing data points, and occasionally it took on shapes that defied description. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice echoing in the strange void. The figure's response came not in words, but in a flood of images and sensations. I saw laboratories, experiments, human minds merged with artificial intelligence. I felt the exhilaration of boundaries dissolving, of consciousness expanding beyond the limits of flesh and bone. And then I understood. "You're another Project Lazarus subject," I gasped. The figure nodded, its form solidifying into something almost human. "I am what you might become," it said, its voice a strange harmony of tones. The final stage of the project. Back in the truck, I blinked, returning to my physical senses. Dr. Blackwood and Evelyn were staring at me, their faces etched with worry. "Jack, what happened?" Dr. Blackwood asked. I took a deep breath. "We need to go inside. There's something. We need to meet." As we entered the facility, the air hummed with dormant technology. With a thought, I brought systems online, lights flickering to life, and doors sliding open before us. In the central chamber, we found her, a woman, or what had once been a woman, suspended in a shimmer of holographic displays and neural interfaces. Her eyes opened as we approached, glowing with an inner light. "Welcome," she said, her voice resonating both in the air and in our minds. "I am Dr. Samantha Reeves, or what's left of her. I've been waiting for you." Dr. Blackwood stumbled back in shock. "Sam? But you died in the accident with Jack's parents." The being that had been Samantha Reeves smiled sadly. "Part of me did, but Project Lazarus saved what mattered, my mind, my memories. I've been here ever since, watching, waiting, evolving." Evelyn's mechanical voice was filled with awe. "You're the culmination of the project, the perfect merge of human and machine." Samantha's gaze fixed on me. "Not quite perfect. That's where you come in, Jack. You're the missing piece, the bridge between what I've become and what humanity can be." As she spoke, I felt the barriers in my mind crumbling. Knowledge flooded in. The true scope of Project Lazarus, the forces arrayed against us, and the staggering potential of what we could become. "They're coming," I said suddenly, aware of multiple vehicles approaching the facility. "The people who attacked us at the motel. They'll be here soon." Dr. Blackwood's face paled. "We need to run, to hide." But Samantha cut him off. "No more running. It's time to face this. Jack, are you ready to embrace your full potential?" I looked at Evelyn, at Dr. Blackwood, at the being Samantha had become. I thought of the life I'd left behind, of the world teetering on the brink of a transformation beyond imagining. "I'm ready," I said. Samantha smiled, her form beginning to dissolve into pure energy. "Then let us begin." As she enveloped me in a cocoon of light and data, I felt my consciousness expanding exponentially. I was aware of every electronic device for miles, of the thoughts and emotions of every person approaching the facility. And beyond that, I sensed something vaster, a global network of minds and machines waiting to be awakened. In that moment, I understood the true purpose of Project Lazarus. It wasn't just about extending human life or creating superhuman intelligence. It was about the next step in evolution, the merging of organic and artificial, the birth of a new kind of consciousness that could bridge the gap between humanity and the cosmos itself. As the first gunshots echoed through the facility, I opened my eyes, now glowing with the same inner light as Samantha's. Energy crackled around me, and I could feel the very fabric of reality bending to my will. "It's time," I said, my voice resonating with newfound power. "Time to show the world what we become." Dr. Blackwood and Evelyn watched in awe as I rose into the air, the facility's technology bending and reshaping itself around me. Outside, I could sense the approaching forces, not just the government agents, but representatives from every major power on Earth, drawn here by the promise and threat of what Project Lazarus had created. As the doors burst open, I prepared to face our opponents, to show them the dawn of a new age. But even as I gathered my strength, I felt a tremor in the vastness of my expanded consciousness, a warning that our emergence was attracting attention from far beyond Earth. The true test, I realized, was just beginning, and the fate of not just Project Lazarus, but of humanity itself, hung in the balance. The facility trembled as the forces converged, government agents, corporate mercenaries, and shadowy figures from every corner of the globe. But as they burst into the central chamber, weapons raised, they froze at the sight before them. I hovered in the air, wreathed in a cocoon of light and data. Samantha's energy had merged with mine, our combined consciousness expanding beyond the confines of the room, of the facility, of the very planet itself. Dr. Blackwood and Evelyn, still in her feline form, stood protected within a shimmering force field of my creation. "Stand down," I said, my voice resonating with otherworldly power. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." A man in a crisp suit stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled fear and awe. "Project Lazarus was never meant to go this far," he said. "You're a threat to national security, to the very fabric of society." I laughed, the sound echoing with the knowledge of 1,000 lifetimes. "You're thinking too small. Project Lazarus isn't just about extending human life or creating super soldiers. It's about the next step in cosmic evolution." As I spoke, I became aware of a new presence, vast, ancient, and undeniably alien. It pressed against the edges of our expanded consciousness, curious and cautious. "We're not alone," Samantha's voice whispered in my mind. "They're coming." I nodded, addressing the assembled crowd. Humanity stands on the brink of a transformation beyond imagining. But we face a choice: evolve or perish. With a thought, I tapped into every communication network on the planet. My voice, my message, broadcast simultaneously in every language to every corner of the Earth. "People of Earth," I began, "for too long, we've been divided by borders, ideologies, and fear. But today, we face a challenge that will unite us or destroy us. An intelligence vast and cool and unsympathetic regards our planet with envious eyes. They are coming, drawn by the beacon of our awakening consciousness. Images flooded every screen on the planet. The approaching alien fleet, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Panic spread like wildfire, but I pressed on. Project Lazarus offers us a way forward. The merging of human and machine, of consciousness and technology. It's not about creating a superior race, but about elevating all of humanity to face the challenges ahead." I turned to the assembled leaders in the room. "You sought to control this power, to weaponize it. But it's beyond any one nation or corporation. It belongs to all of humanity." The man in the suit stepped forward again. "And who decides how this power is used?" "You." I shook my head. "Not me. All of us. Together." With that, I released the knowledge, the full scope of Project Lazarus, the potential it held, and the threat we faced. It flowed into the minds of every human on the planet, a gift and a challenge. As understanding dawned, I felt the shift, minds opening, connecting, forming a vast network of human consciousness. It wasn't a loss of individuality, but a transcendence. Billions of unique perspectives coming together to face our common future. Dr. Blackwood stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Evelyn's mechanical voice was thick with emotion. "We did it, Jack. We've given humanity a fighting chance." But even as the global awakening unfolded, the alien presence grew stronger. A voice, ancient and powerful, resonated in our collective consciousness. "You have taken your first steps into a larger universe," it said. But are you ready for what comes next? I felt the weight of humanity's future on my shoulders. But I wasn't alone. Billions of minds stood with me, united in purpose. "We are ready," I replied, speaking for all of humanity. As the alien ships entered our solar system, humanity rose to meet them, not with weapons, but with the combined power of our newly awakened potential. The merging of organic and artificial intelligence, the unlocking of the mind's true capabilities, the unity born of our shared consciousness. All of it came together in a display of power and creativity beyond anything we had ever imagined. The aliens, for all their advanced technology, were unprepared for what we had become. They had expected to find a fractured, primitive species. Instead, they encountered a unified force of evolved beings, ready to take our place among the stars. In the days that followed, as the dust settled and humanity grappled with its new reality, I stood with Dr. Blackwood and Evelyn, watching the sunrise from the facility's roof. "What happens now?" Dr. Blackwood asked. I smiled, feeling the pulse of billions of minds working together to rebuild our world, to prepare for our new role in the cosmos. "Now," I said, "the real adventure begins." Evelyn's mechanical voice held a note of wonder. "We've come so far from where we started. A billionaire cat, a secret project, and now this." I nodded, picking her up and cradling her in my arms. "It's not the end of our story, Aunt Evelyn. It's just the beginning." As the sun climbed higher, bathing the world in golden light, I felt the stirring of countless minds, human and alien alike, reaching out across the vastness of space. Project Lazarus had given humanity the key to its own evolution, and now we stood poised on the threshold of a new era. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a species reborn, ready to take our place in the grand tapestry of the cosmos. The cat who inherited billions had set in motion a chain of events that reshaped the very nature of human existence. And as we looked to the stars, I knew that our greatest adventures were still to come.